Chapter 11. It was like a dream, Joan thought. Yes, it was like a dream. Walking through the convolutions of barbed wire, the Arab boy carrying his suitcases and chattering shrilly in Turkish to a big, fat, suspicious-looking man who was the Turkish station master. And there, waiting for her, the familiar sleeping car with the wagon-lit man in his chocolate uniform leaning out of her window. Alep Stambul on the side of the coach, the link that bound this resting place in the desert to civilization. The polite greeting in French, her compartment thrown open, the bed already made with its sheets and its pillow. Civilization again. Outwardly, Joan was once more the quiet, efficient traveller, the same Mrs. Scudamore that had left Baghdad less than a week ago. Only Joan herself knew of that astonishing, that almost frightening change that lay behind the facade. The train, as she had said, had come just at the right moment, just when those last barriers which she herself had so carefully erected had been swept away in a rising tide of fear and loneliness. She had had, as others had had in days gone by, a vision of herself. And although she might seem now the commonplace English traveller, intent on the minor details of travel, her heart and mind were held in that abasement of self-reproach that had come to her out there in the silence and the sunlight. She had answered, almost mechanically, the Indian's comments and questions. "Oh, why not Mem Sahib come back for lunch? Lunch already. Very nice lunch. It's nearly 5 o'clock now. Too late lunch. Have tea?" Yes, she said, she would have tea. "But where Mem Sahib go? I look out, not see Mem Sahib anywhere, not know which way Mem Sahib gone." She had walked rather far, she said, farther than usual. "That's not safe at all. Mem Sahib get lost, not know which way to go. Perhaps walk wrong way." Yes, she said, she had lost her way for a time, but luckily she had walked in the right direction. She would have tea now and then rest. What time did the train go? "Train go 8:30. Sometimes wait for convoy to come in, but no convoy come today. Wadi very bad. Lot of water. Rush through like that. Whoosh." Joan nodded. "Mem Sahib look very tired. Mem Sahib got fever, perhaps." No, Joan said. She hadn't got fever. Now. Mem Sahib looked different. Well, she thought, Mem Sahib was different. Perhaps the difference showed in her face. She went to her room and stared into the fly-stained mirror. Was there any difference? She looked, definitely, older. There were circles under her eyes. Her face was streaked with yellow dust and sweat. She washed her face, ran a comb through her hair, applied powder and lipstick and looked again. Yes, there was definitely a difference. Something had gone from the face that stared so earnestly back at her. Something. Could it be smugness? What a horribly smug creature she had been. She felt still the keen disgust that had come to her out there, the self-loathing, the new humility of spirit. Rodney, she thought. Rodney. Just his name, repeated softly in her thoughts. She held to it as a symbol of a purpose, to tell him everything, not to spare herself. That, she felt, was all that mattered. They would make together, so far as was possible at this late date, a new life. She would say, "I'm a fool and a failure. Teach me, out of your wisdom, out of your gentleness, the way to live." That and forgiveness, for Rodney had a lot to forgive. And the wonderful thing about Rodney, she realized now, was that he had never hated her. No wonder that Rodney was loved so much, that his children adored him, even Avril, she thought, behind her antagonism, had never stopped loving him, that the servants would do anything to please him, that he had friends everywhere. Rodney, she thought, has never been unkind to anyone in his life. She sighed. She was very tired and her body ached all over. She drank her tea and then lay down on her bed until it was time to have dinner and start for the train. She felt no restlessness now, no fear, no longing for occupation or distraction. There were no more lizards to pop out of holes and frighten her. She had met herself and recognized herself. Now she only wanted to rest, to lie with an empty, peaceful mind, and with always, at the back of that mind, the dim picture of Rodney's kind, dark face. And now she was in the train, had listened to the conductor's voluble account of the accident on the line, had handed over to him her passport and her tickets, and had received his assurance that he would wire to Stamboul for fresh reservations on the Simplon Orient Express. She also entrusted him with a wire to be sent from Aleppo to Rodney. Journey delayed. All well. Love, Joan. Rodney would receive it before her original schedule had expired. So that was all arranged, and she had nothing more to do or to think about. She could relax like a tired child. 5 days' peace and quiet, whilst the Taurus and Orient Express rushed westwards, bringing her each day nearer to Rodney and forgiveness. They arrived at Aleppo early the following morning. Until then, Joan had been the only passenger since communications with Iraq were interrupted, but now the train was filled to overflowing. There had been delays, cancellations, confusions in the booking of sleepers. There was a lot of hoarse, excited talking, protests, arguments, disputes, all taking place in different languages. Joan was travelling first class, and on the Taurus Express, the first-class sleepers were the old double ones. The door slid back, and a tall woman in black came in. Behind her, the conductor was reaching down through the window where porters were handing him up cases. The compartment seemed full of cases, expensive cases stamped with coronets. The tall woman talked to the attendant in French. She directed him where to put things. At last he withdrew. The woman turned and smiled at Joan, an experienced cosmopolitan smile. "You are English?" she said. She spoke with hardly a trace of accent. She had a long, pale, exquisitely mobile face and rather strange light grey eyes. She was, Joan thought, about 45. "I apologize for this early morning intrusion. It is an iniquitously uncivilized hour for a train to leave, and I disturb your repose. Also, these carriages are very old-fashioned. On the new ones, the compartments are single, but still—" She smiled, and it was a very sweet and almost childlike smile. "We shall not get too badly on each other's nerves. It is but 2 days to Stamboul, and I am not too difficult to live with. And if I smoke too much, you will tell me. But now I leave you to sleep. I go to the restaurant car that they put on at this moment." She swayed slightly, as a bump indicated the truth of her words. "And wait there to have breakfast. Again, I say how sorry I am you have been disturbed." "Oh, that's quite all right," Joan said. "One expects these things when travelling." "I see you are sympathetic. Good. We shall get on together famously." She went out, and as she drew the door to behind her, Joan heard her being greeted by her friends on the platform with cries of "Sasha! Sasha!" and a voluble burst of conversation in some language that Joan's ear did not recognize. Joan herself was by now thoroughly awake. She felt rested after her night's sleep. She always slept well in a train. She got up and proceeded to dress. The train drew out of Alep when she had nearly finished her toilet. When she was ready, she went out into the corridor, but first she took a quick look at the labels on her new companion's suitcases. Princess Hohenbach song. In the restaurant car, she found her new acquaintance eating breakfast and conversing with great animation to a small, stout Frenchman. The princess waved a greeting to her and indicated the seat at her side. "But you are energetic," she exclaimed. "If it was me, I should still lie and sleep." "Now, Monsieur Baudier, go on with what you are telling me. It is most interesting." The princess talked in French to Monsieur Baudier, in English to Joan, in fluent Turkish to the waiter, and occasionally, across the aisle, in equally fluent Italian to a rather melancholy-looking officer. Presently, the stout Frenchman finished his breakfast and withdrew, bowing politely. "What a good linguist you are," said Joan. The long, pale face smiled, a melancholy smile this time. "Yes, why not? I am Russian, you see, and I was married to a German, and I have lived much in Italy. I speak 8, 9 languages, some well, some not so well. It is a pleasure, do you not think, to converse? All human beings are interesting, and one lives such a short time on this earth. One should exchange ideas, experiences. There is not enough love on the earth, that is what I say. Sasha, my friends say to me, there are people it is impossible to love. Turks, Armenians, Levantines. But I say no. I love them all. Garçon l'addition." Joan blinked slightly, for the last sentence had been practically joined to the one before it. The restaurant car attendant came hurrying up respectfully, and it was borne in upon Joan that her travelling companion was a person of considerable importance. All that morning and afternoon they wound across the plains and then climbed slowly up into the Taurus. Sasha sat in a corner and read and smoked and occasionally made unexpected and sometimes embarrassing remarks. Joan found herself being fascinated by the strange woman who came from a different world and whose mental processes were so totally different from anything she herself had previously come across. The mingling of the impersonal and the intimate had an odd, compelling charm for Joan. Sasha said to her suddenly, "You do not read? No? And you do nothing with your hands? You do not knit? That is not like most English women. And yet you look most English. Yes, you look exactly English." Joan smiled. "I've actually nothing to read. I was held up at Tel Abu Hamid owing to the breakdown on the line, so I got through all the literature I had with me." "But you do not mind? You did not feel it necessary to get something at Alep?" "No, you are content just to sit and look out through the window at the mountains, and yet you do not see them. You look at something that you yourself see. Is it not so? You experience in your mind some great emotion, or you have passed through one. You have a sorrow or a great happiness?" Joan hesitated with a slight frown. Sasha burst out laughing. "Ah, but that is so English. You think it's impertinent if I ask the questions that we Russians feel are so natural. It is curious that, if I were to ask you where you had been, to what hotels and what scenery you had seen, and if you had children and what do they do, and have you travelled much, and do you know a good hairdresser in London, all that you would answer with pleasure. But if I ask something that comes into my mind, have you a sorrow, Is your husband faithful? Do you sleep much with men? What has been your most beautiful experience in life? Are you conscious of your love of God? All those things would make you draw back, affronted. And yet, they are much more interesting than the others. N'est-ce toi? I suppose, said Joan slowly, that we are very reserved as a nation. Yes, yes. One cannot even say to an English woman who has recently been married, "Are you going to have a baby?" That is, one cannot say so across the table at luncheon. No, one has to take her aside to whisper it. And yet, if the baby is there in its cradle, you can say, "How is your baby?" Well, it is rather intimate, isn't it? No, I do not see it. I met the other day a friend I had not seen for many years, a Hungarian. "Mitzi," I say to her, "you are married, yes, several years now. You have not a baby. Why not?" She answers me she cannot think why not. For 5 years, she says, she and her husband have tried hard. But oh, how hard they have tried. What, she asks, can she do about it? And since we are at a luncheon party, everyone there makes a suggestion. Yes, and some of them very practical. Who knows, something may come of it. Joan looked stolidly unconvinced. Yet she felt, suddenly welling up in her, a strong impulse to open her own heart to this friendly, peculiar foreign creature. She wanted, badly, to share with someone the experience that she had been through. She needed, as it were, to assure herself of its reality. She said slowly, "It is true, I have been through rather an upsetting experience." "Ah, yes, what was it? A man?" No, certainly not. I am glad. It is so often a man, and really in the end it becomes a little boring. I was all alone at the rest house at Tel Abu Hamid, a horrible place, all flies and tins and roll of barbed wire, and very gloomy and dark inside. That is necessary because of the heat in summer, but I know what you mean. I had no one to talk to, and I soon finished my books, and I got into a very peculiar state. Yes, that might well be so. It is interesting what you tell me. Go on. I began to find out things about myself. Things that I had never known before, or rather, things that I had known but had never been willing to recognize. I can't quite explain to you. Oh, but you can. It is quite easy. I shall understand. Sasha's interest was so natural, so unassumed, that Joan found herself talking with an astonishing lack of self-consciousness. Since to Sasha, to talk of one's feelings and one's intimate relationships was perfectly natural, it began to seem natural to Joan also. She began to talk with less hesitation, describing her uneasiness, her fears, and her final panic. I dare say it will seem absurd to you, but I felt that I was completely lost, alone, that God himself had forsaken me. Yes, one has felt that. I have felt it myself. It is very dark, very terrible. It was not dark. It was light, blinding light. There was no shelter, no cover, no shadow. We mean the same thing, though. For you, it was light that was terrible, because you had hidden so long under cover and in deep shade. But for me it was darkness, not seeing my way, being lost in the night. But the agony is the same. It is the knowledge of one's own nothingness and of being cut off from the love of God. Joan said slowly, and then it happened, like a miracle. I saw everything, myself and what I had been. All my silly pretenses and shams fell away. It was like being born again. She looked anxiously at the other woman. Sasha bent her head. And I knew what I had to do. I had to go home and start again, build up a new life, from the beginning. There was a silence. Sasha was looking at Joan thoughtfully, and something in her expression puzzled Joan. She said with a slight flush, "Oh, I dare say it sounds very melodramatic and far-fetched." Sasha interrupted her. No, you do not understand me. Your experience was real. It has happened to many, to Saint Paul, to others of the saints of God, and to ordinary mortals and sinners. It is conversion. It is vision. It is the soul knowing its own bitterness. Yes, it is real, all that. It is as real as eating your dinner or brushing your teeth. But I wonder, all the same, I wonder. I feel I've been so unkind, done harm to someone I love. Yes, you have remorse. And I can hardly wait to get there, to get home, I mean. There is so much I want to say, to tell him. To tell whom? Your husband? Yes. He has been so kind, so patient, always. But he has not been happy. I have not made him happy. And you think you will be better able to make him happy now? We can at least have an explanation. He can know how sorry I am. He can help me to, what shall I say? The words of the communion service flashed through her mind. To lead a new life from now on. Sasha said gravely, "That is what the saints of God were able to do." Joan stared. "But I am not a saint." "No, that is what I meant." Sasha paused, then said, with a slight change of tone, "Forgive me that I should have said that, and perhaps it is not true." Joan looked slightly bewildered. Sasha lit another cigarette and began to smoke violently, staring out of the window. "I don't know," said Joan uncertainly, "why I should tell you all this." "But naturally, because you wish to tell someone. You wish to speak of it. It is in your mind and you want to talk of it. That is natural enough." "I'm usually very reserved." Sasha looked amused. "And so proud of it, like all English people. Oh, you are a very curious race, but very curious. So shamefaced, so embarrassed by your virtues, so ready to admit, to boast of your deficiencies." "I think you are exaggerating slightly," said Joan stiffly. She felt suddenly very British, very far away from the exotic, pale-faced woman in the opposite corner of the carriage, the woman to whom, a minute or two previously, she had confided a most intimate personal experience. Joan said in a conventional voice, "Are you going through on the Simplon Orient?" "No, I stay a night in Istanbul and then I go to Vienna." She added carelessly, It is possible that I shall die there, but perhaps not. Do you mean, Joan hesitated, bewildered, that you've had a premonition? Ah, no. Sasha burst out laughing. No, it is not like that. It is an operation I am going to have there, a very serious operation. Not very often is it that it succeeds. But there are good surgeons in Vienna. The one to whom I am going, he's very clever, a Jew. I have always said it would be stupid to annihilate all the Jews in Europe. They are clever doctors and surgeons, yes, and they are clever artistically too. Oh dear, said Joan, I'm so sorry. Because I may be going to die? But what does it matter? One has to die sometime, and I may not die. I have the idea, if I live, that I will enter a convent. I know of a very strict order. One never speaks. It is perpetual meditation and prayer. Joan's imagination failed to conceive of a Sasha perpetually silent and meditating. Sasha went on gravely. There will be much prayer needed soon, when the war comes. War? Joan stared. Sasha nodded her head. But yes, certainly war is coming. Next year or the year after. Really? Said Joan. I think you're mistaken. No. I have friends who are very well informed, and they have told me so. It is all decided. But war? Where? Against whom? War everywhere. Every nation will be drawn in. My friends think that Germany will win quite soon, but I do not agree. Unless they can win very, very quickly indeed. You see, I know many English and Americans, and I know what they are like. Surely, said Joan, nobody really wants war. She spoke incredulously. For what else does the Hitler Youth movement exist? Joan said earnestly, but I have friends who have been in Germany a good deal, and they think that there is a lot to be said for the Nazi movement. Oh, la la, said Sasha. See if they say that in 3 years' time. Then she leaned forward as the train drew slowly to a standstill. See, we have come to the Sicilian gates. It is beautiful, is it not? Let us get out. They got out of the train and stood looking down through the great gap in the mountain chain to the blue, hazy plains beneath. It was close on sunset, and the air was exquisitely cool and still. Joan thought, how beautiful. She wished Rodney was here to see it with her.